Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit in June 2021. And today we have Lianne Potter, which is actually going to be talking about what I'm really looking forward to hear, which is something that I don't think sometimes we hear enough in security. And it's about tales of an anthropologist in cybersecurity. And it's about reciprocity. All right, if I said that correctly.
So, I always trip over that word. When I was doing my master's in anthropology, and I'd go out and do other talks on reciprocity, I had to say it kind of reciprocity because otherwise I go. So I don't think any anthropologists really say it very well. So you did well. I think you did great.
All right, so look, over to you, and I'm really looking forward. And I think if you guys want to pop a question, pop your audio, or just drop the question in the chat, and then we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Thank you all for joining me today. So in March, Prolific Hacker Group Reevil gave an interview to Recorded Future. And in it, they were asked what did they think of the insurance industry, particularly those who offer cyber insurance. And they described it as the tastiest of morsels. So the insurance industry happens to be one of the sectors I work really closely with. And to be in the crosshairs like this is really concerning. But it was the language the hackers used that I was actually really grateful for. The tastiest morsels. It's so evocative. It's kind of triggers something primal in you. You know, it hacks back to a time when we were just as likely to be hunted as we were to be the hunters. So when I was working for this insurance industry, I said to them, you know, this hacker group, they're keen on us and other hackers will follow suit. So this is serious and we have to be serious about this, but we have a choice. So I told them, we can either make it really easy for them, for the cyber criminals. We could put out this really nice buffet and say, hey, help yourself. Or we can make it really difficult for them. We can make our tasty information, we'll put it on the highest shelf, like the honeybees do in Nepal, where they make their hives on these big mountain faces that only the really brave can actually access. And I said to them, but just because we protect ourselves, do everything we possibly can, that doesn't mean that someone with the right skills, expertise, and even motivation won't one day come knocking on our door. And because we have to make it difficult for them, it doesn't mean we are completely safe, which some people often forget. But if we do this together, I explained, we can act as a collective to face these threats. We can then swarm, raise the alarm, act quickly together, reduce the impact, and get back to a safe place. So this story that I've just told you now became my introduction to every single team I worked with in this insurance company, whether they were working for the engineering team or the call center. The message was the same. We're facing a targeted threat, and as a security practitioner, I really need your help. But why communicate this message to this industry in such a targeted way? Because storytelling is the reason why we are still around as a species today. Our ancient ancestors used storytelling to really understand their surroundings, to imagine a future that had not happened yet, so that they could plan and prepare for it, to educate, to create folklore, to build a community, to keep them strong, to innovate. They even used it to entertain, and that helped them build bonds. When you trigger that part of your brain that goes, oh, that's really interesting, I'm going to remember that, that is worth its weight in gold. And too often as security practitioners, we kind of forget that. We kind of forget that we need to make this stuff interesting. We might find it inherently interesting, but we need to find the hook that makes it inherently interesting for everyone else. So when we're challenged on why we're doing certain things and we reply in something of the effect of, because I said so, I'm the security person, we are doing it this way because I said so, without proper explanation or reason, I have to say, it doesn't work for your kids. It's not going to work for your colleagues. Being black and white in terms of answering questions about security, so for example, security posture, does have its place. Sometimes you do need a quick factual answer because either urgency, if something needs sorting, we need to do it this way, or there is only one way of doing it, but not for everything. But if you're trying to get people on side, don't neglect the grey areas. The grey areas is the real sweet spot in storytelling. We love to understand about outliers, particularly when it comes to things like risk. It's kind of like sniffing the boundaries of like what is and what isn't allowed. So, for example, HR in your induction, they might talk about claiming on expenses. They might say something like an overnight stay the company will pay you £30 a night for an evening meal. Two things are going to happen here. Firstly, most people will try and hit that limit, hit that £30, because it's a black and white boundary, and in their head they'll be thinking, well, everyone's going to try and go for £30, I'm going to go to the very top. The other thing that'll happen is you'll get loads of questions testing the fence. Just like in Jurassic Park, you'll get questions like, does that include a drink at the bar? Does that include tipping wait staff? And things of that sort of ilk. But we need to remember that testing the fence isn't a bad thing. You shouldn't automatically go, well, they must be dodgy because they're asking all these questions. It's a really human thing to test the boundaries. And I urge you not to shut down these grey area questions. They give you such a better insight into your people, especially more so than just accepting the black and white explanations of processes. It gives you a heads up to any weak spots in your process and policies. And I find the best way to do it is to really encourage these grey area questions, and storytelling really helps with that. And if you kind of think of it like a choose your adventure, if you can tell this is the process, but here's a story behind it, people will say, well, what happens if you do it this way and that way? It will help you identify the blind spots, but it'll also help you understand actually where are the limits that people are going to push here, and how do I account for those? It just gives you much better insight. But you need a really open and trusting environment to support people having these grey area questions. If you don't have a trusting environment, those grey area questions are not going to come up. Too often, security is often about control and treatment rather than the cure. And that's because we don't understand the human factor. But that's why you're here today. You have joined me. Thank you very much for taking the time for my Tales of an Anthropologist in Cybersecurity. Today, I'm going to talk about why culture should be your first priority and not the tooling when it comes to securing your organization. We've kind of got the tooling down. So what's the next step? I'm going to share with you how I've used my expertise as an anthropologist and a security practitioner. I have worked in technical roles as a security person as well, to change security culture in the workplace for the better. We're going to look at anthropological theories such as reciprocity. Reciprocity is a type of exchange involving give and take of objects, which serves to build and confirm social relationships. And I'll explain how giving gifts, and I'll explain what that actually means in a moment, but giving gifts gives your organization not only an opportunity to be reciprocated on, but yield greater resources for your security posture. I'm also going to talk about using partisan observation and how to use that effectively to improve collaboration and understand the people you're working with. And finally, we're going to look at security usability. Should we compromise on usability when it comes to security? But before we start, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What is anthropology? So when I was first studying anthropology, people used to ask, is that something to do with bones? Or is that a bit like Jurassic Park? Yes, this is another Jurassic Park reference. As an aside, I think that Jurassic Park is a great hacker movie. I mean, Darkseid hacked a gas pipe, but Dennis brought so much destruction to Jurassic Park. I would be really interested to know what their cyber insurance was like at Jurassic Park. Anyways, I digress. Love Jurassic Park. When I let people down gently and say, no, anthropology isn't either about bones or dinosaurs, I kind of wish it was, that's so cool, but it isn't. Anthro of anthropology means human. So anthropology is the study of what makes us human. So I study the different aspects of the human experience, how cultures are born, grown, developed, thrive, or collapse. And my specific interest is in digital anthropology, which is the study of how we engage with people online through digital communities. And it's a place we're kind of feeling a lot more comfortable these last 16 months when we've spent a good portion of our social interactions either through video calls, social media, or messaging apps. The workplace has always been changing though, even before COVID. This isn't a massive revolution. Anyone else think that this guy here who's got a PlayStation next to his desk is a total badass? He's my hero. But as you can see, things have been changing. And the tech has also changed. The office layouts, the way we work, everyone's talking about hybrid working, but what has remained a constant throughout all the working environments is the human connection, either physical or not. The human element is your only constant in this. So if you want to approach security culture that works for you in your organization to help face new threats, then you need to start thinking about what is your constant, the human element. Because while security vendors might be desperate to sell you loads of tools, and thank God I couldn't be without security vendors. You know, I'm big seam head, and I wouldn't have been able to do my job manually monitoring all those endpoints. The fact of the matter is that 95% of incidents all start with a person, so tools can only get you so far. Again, it's that treatment over cure. What are we going to decide to do? And just as a sort of intro, why anthropology? You know, why not psychology? Why not behavioral science? I am not fussed with which one of these you pick to apply to your security culture. I just happen to be a cyber anthropologist. That's what this talk is about. It's my focus. But if the security industry hired more people from the humanities, maybe we'd need less sticking plasters. The clue is in the name, human. Because at the end of the day, when you follow the cables, our colleagues, our customers are all people, and that's the ones who we're protecting, and that should be our priority. That doesn't mean that your role as a human-centered security practitioner is that of savior or hero. You need help. You can't do this alone, and you need a tribe mentality to help you with that. There's a common line that appears in a lot of policies and security training in organizations around the world. I'll give you a second to think about that. Can you think what is the common line when it comes to security policies and processes? It's always at the top somewhere when you're discussing it. Any ideas? It is, security is everyone's responsibility. Is it though? I mean, I haven't always worked in security, and when I used to see that line, I used to just go, yeah, but are they paid to do that job? And isn't it actually really security's responsibility? And I kind of agree. I think we say that line in the hope that people will be like, oh, I'm going to step up, take action. I'm going to be there with these security people. It's a big ask that. Security is everyone's responsibility. It's a big ask. I, as a security practitioner, find it hard even keeping up with the latest threats, the latest CVEs. Am I expecting my non-security colleagues to keep on top of that too? Nah. But what is everyone's responsibility? It's culture. Because we all work together, we all have to embody the same values to make sure we get the job done, regardless if that job is, as a security person, make sure what we do is secure, or the people creating the products and services, getting that out to market. The culture around actually how do we achieve those end goals is our collective responsibility. Luckily, security happens to be embedded in that, even if it's not very obvious at first. To build an intrinsic security culture, however, we need to know what we're working with first. There are some common perceptions of security and security teams in a lot of organizations, and this is based on my experience, both from as a security person and then my past life when I used to work in organizations as a non-security person. It's based on evidence that I've heard from other people in different organizations, research online. This is a generalization, so try not to get too hurt, but on the whole, this happens, there's some element of this happens in every organization. The problem is we need to think, what impact is this perception having on building an intrinsic security culture? Security practitioners have a PR problem. Do you agree? We are often seen as a blocker to innovation. We are the team that puts the controls in place. We cause friction. We bamboozle our colleagues with technical terms. We're called gatekeepers. We dictate from on high on ivory towers. How many times has your team been called an ivory tower? We use terms like insider threat, least privilege, zero trust, all in relation to our colleagues. That is not very endearing. If your CISO is doing a talk at the whole organization and is talking about the insider threat, about zero trust, about least privilege, to a group of people that are not technical or are not part of the security function, hearing that, how would that make you feel if you weren't quite sure what this meant? It is not endearing. We facilitate a knowledge inequality through a we know best mentality. When we do share information, however, our favorite ingredients are a bit of fear, uncertainty, doubt. This is how I'm going to tell you all about how scary things are out there. Now, put my behavioral science hat on, which I do occasionally put on, even though it's not my field specifically. Fear is recognized as a motivator to influence change in behavior. But if that's all you're drawing upon, if that's all you're using, it can cease to become impactful. You shut off. If someone keeps telling you the same message of fear, if you can't do anything about it because you feel like you can't do anything about it, you're just going to switch off and put your head in the sand. Humor and actually using influences from other people around the organization is a better way of communicating that message. So if the people we're trying to protect are fatigued by our interventions and they're causing them to switch on, that is scary. We are losing our ability to face threats as a collective. We are going to be weaker as a result in terms of our culture, and that early warning system that says something is happening, that something is going wrong somewhere, will be lost. But the biggest crime in my eyes is that we are boring. Yeah, and back to storytelling. I cannot stress enough how important this is. Having an imagination is one of those things that makes us uniquely human, and it's also something that's found in primates. But for as long as we've been telling storytelling, for as long as we've had stories, we've been acting things out, telling people how things are done. It's why Netflix is so popular. We love a good story. Storytelling is ingrained in our DNA. When it comes to cybersecurity, this is one story we should excel at. That's what got me interested. I'm sure it's got you interested in security, is that the excitement of cybersecurity. Why don't we tell people about how exciting cybersecurity is? Why do we bore people to death? It's got all the makings of a Hollywood blockbuster. We've got good versus evil, heroes and villains, espionages and heists. Instead, we bore people to death. We make learning how to protect ourselves and the group a chore. Think about your last mandatory training video you had to watch. It's awful. And this is exemplified by this article. I fell in love with this article straight away. It's actually still in proof, so it should be released this month. The researchers in this article apparently did something unique, and in itself, what they said was unique. I nearly fell off my own chair. According to their reviews of all the existing literature out there and all the research, they approached their study about security awareness and training completely differently, apparently, to anyone else that's ever done it. Instead of asking the security people what they thought of the awareness training, they went to the people who actually did the training and said, "What do you think of the training?" How has nobody in academia done this yet? How come we are asking people, what do you think of our training? They're the people that are having to sit through it, not us. We are testing our metrics of how good our security awareness training is based on our own biases. That's madness. That's not how things are done. So the reviews are in. No Oscars for us. We are extremely boring, as you can see from that red hot poker comment. This article explains that security culture falls down because security practitioners fail to understand what it's like for their colleagues to do their jobs. We fail to account for the practicalities, their own office politics, and the culture that they're operating in, their microcultures. So how can we use anthropology to understand our people? Participant observation is one way. Participant observation is a research technique used in fieldwork, and it's where data is collected, generated based on first-hand observation and participation. I'm stressing this word. If it was an email I was writing to, it's being bold. Participation in the experiences and social activities of a community. It's not just observing, it's not just making notes, no one knowing it, you are ingrained. So when I took the decision to approach our security culture as an anthropologist rather than just a pure security practitioner, I faced two challenges in myself. So biases and trust. So there was biases on both parts, in the sense that I did have an agenda, which is, improve security culture in the organization. So I had to be cognizant, regardless of how much I wanted to approach cybersecurity from a more collaborative perspective. I was, at the end of the day, one of them. I'm a security person, oh no. So naturally, this meant I needed to build up trust within the community outside the security team, and also my own security team. I was going to go off and work with the enemy. Who was I going to come back as? And am I going to change things that will impact the security team negatively? Who knows? But that was all the fear that was circling around when I said I'm going to do it this way from now on. There is a lot of also cognitive distance when it's associated with good security practices, and I needed to be mindful of that. Now, cognitive distance, for those that you don't know, is a term to describe mental discomfort as a result of holding two conflicting beliefs and values or attitudes. So people often seek consistency. We all do. It's easier for, that's how we survived, you know. Mental shortcuts is how we know, okay, we can just go do that. So consistency in attitudes and perceptions is a survival mechanism. So whenever we cause a conflict in these, you know, heuristics of these shortcuts and attitudes, it causes people to feel really uneasy and discomfort. And this inconsistency between what people believe and how they behave motivates people to engage in actions that they try and minimize those feelings. So in another way, you know, people try and relieve this kind of cognitive distance by rejecting things that you told. So I could say to you, you know, you need a good password, and you could just say, well, I reject that because I've been doing it this way for so long. I know it's bad, but I've been doing it this way. Or explaining it away. I don't have time to change all my passwords because that'll just take too long and I've got a job to do. Or just avoiding the information. Oh, I didn't see that email from the security team come in. I'm going to ignore that. So like I said, for the passwords, everyone knows, and I think sometimes as practitioners forget this, our people do know that they need good passwords. They're not just trying to mess us about. They're not ignorant. They do know they need good passwords. They do know it needs to be long, unique, different one for everyone. But as security rankings show, password 123 consistently makes the top of every list. They know what they're doing is wrong, yet they still do it. Even if they don't admit it, and they certainly won't seek help to rectify it, they know how bad their password is, and it's really awkward for them to actually break out of that mindset. So when I was undertaking this partisan observation, I had to really be mindful not to step on any toes, not just for passwords, but for anything security related. I wanted to avoid any negative associations I hold myself as a representative of the security team or the security function in general. So I had to really keep being careful of what I was saying and what impression I was giving and the faces I was pulling if they were telling me something bad. As a side note on passwords, the reason why passwords are consistently bad is because of bad habits. I'm going to put that out there for a second. It's not because people are stupid, it's bad habits. This device you see right here is the Tiger Electronic Dear Diary. If you were a child of the early 90s, you freaked every time this advert came on because, oh, you could keep all your secrets locked in a password thing and all your dear diaries and, oh, I like John and Mr. Smith smells, you put on a password device. It was very exciting. And I begged my parents for this for Christmas and I got it. It allowed 8 characters for a password. It wasn't until my late 20s that I graduated beyond an 8-character password. Bad habits stick. Think of the smoker trying to quit. It's the same for passwords. You know it's bad for you, but it's easier just to carry on as you are. So think about kids today. They're exposed to devices that require passwords at so much younger age. But how long a password are we expecting these young kids to have? How complex are we expecting them to have? Not very, I imagine. So it's a big ask. So unfortunately, good passwords would drive if we actually caught them young and gave them really good habits to start with. But that's kind of not going to happen because you need to have the sort of capacity to be able to create a strong password from day one. So this problem is going to persist, I'm afraid. This password problem is going to persist because it's a bad habit, and we just need to cut people some slack and understand that isn't it's a habit of a lifetime. It's going to be difficult to break. That's an aside. Anyways, back to the show, partisan observation. I just wanted to get that out about passwords just because it's something that comes up quite a lot. Partisan observation, as I say, isn't just about observing. It's about embedding yourself into their world, into their experiences, almost completely leaving your identity as a security person behind. It's a way to understand people in collaboration with them. So in the teams I work with as a cyber anthropologist, I explained, I came to them, I said, I'm going to approach it from this way. Everything was really transparent. It was no secret. Everyone knew what I was doing. And I said, treat me like one of the team. So naturally at first there was a period of bedding in. So me, an outsider, I had to gradually gain their trust, work alongside them, try and understand, get your ear into, what was explicitly being said, either about the security processes or things in general. what was not being said? That's where the fruits of the labor lies. In particular, insights into how other teams engaged or didn't engage. We've all got our own issues with other teams as well. Allowed me to identify where there were lapses in communication, directly leading to workarounds or bypasses of security controls. There was also an element of novelty that I just totally didn't anticipate. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Rarely security teams seek to engage with the wider business in such a way. And this was seen as a break in social norms. So as people sort of started to stop seeing me as just a member of the security team, they started seeing me as an ally. And that led to a really unusual role that I took up, which was that of security confessor. I was not anticipating this at all. So people would come to me and they would bare their soul to me about all these security misdemeanors they'd done. It took time, it wasn't instantly. And I would listen, and I would do so without judgment or retribution, because I was like, keep telling me stuff, don't, no hold bars. I'm here to listen. I'm not here to judge. So very quickly, I was able to gain a really good sense of how we function and how we were perceived in a wider context, in the situations our colleagues were working in. Whenever they were trying to get a project over the line, I saw, actually, that's where we're stopping them. That's why they're pissed off at us. So from a security perspective, it became really evident how integral each relationship was between the teams, the functions, the department, the whole estate, the whole shebang. Crucially, a lot of the gripes were about communication. It wasn't necessarily the controls, it was the lack of autonomy people felt. Historically, we'd never consulted with people actually doing the work. We'd have meetings, of course, we won't just put stuff in place, but we'd invite all the senior leaders in, the heads of engineering, for example, and we'd say, this is how we want to do things. These guys didn't have experience for the day-to-day. They were the leadership team. Crucially, we never also checked, once we put these processes in place, are they working? What's happening? How are these people living with these new processes? We never asked. We didn't care. But there is something you can do with this information, and leads me on to my next anthropological methodology that I used: reciprocity. As I said earlier, reciprocity is a type of exchange involving give and take of objects and services to build and confirm social relationships. There was a book in the 70s called Stone Age Economics, and it gave us anthropologists a typography. I'm going to be tripping over reciprocity and typography throughout this, so apologies. That differentiates between the types of reciprocity and how we manage social boundaries. So the way to think of it, like I've done this image, is to think of it as a circle. So those closest to the middle have the strongest relationship. And as social distance increases, those relationships become more utilitarian. The knock-on effect is that people become, as you go further out, disinterested. And then that's when self-interested attitudes proliferate, which from a security perspective is not an ideal situation if you need all hands on deck for a security incident. Reciprocal relationships are really important to connect people and to promote social solidarity. These relationships are built from the giving of gifts. So that's giving a gift is the reciprocity part, which take the form, not of necessarily an actual, here you go, here's a present, but of resource allocation, distribution of services, or tokens of support. I'll stick up for you in that next meeting, that sort of thing. The inherent value of the given object is often a lot less significant than the effect of giving that object in building and consolidating those relationships between the giver and the receiver. Through the giving of gifts, you're kind of offering an invitation saying, let's establish a closer in-group relationship. In you accepting that gift, it's kind of an unspoken moral obligation to reciprocate, either immediately or in the future. Reciprocity is why Santa is so jolly. Do you know when people always go, I love giving presents? It's because it is better to give than to receive. And studies have shown this, when people are given gifts, not only do they feel obligated to give something in return, but they feel they need to over-reciprocate. So it's kind of like thank you for giving me that present. Here's a little bit of extra tax. I acknowledge that you've given me a gift. And here's a little bit more to say, I acknowledge that. And I've certainly been there with my husband, for example. So one time he bought me this lovely gift for my birthday. Really nice, really thoughtful. You could tell hours of effort had gone in there. Something so left field. The first thing I thought after, that's a lovely gift, that. The second thing was, I need to top this next birthday. What am I going to get him that's going to go above and beyond what he's given me? It doesn't need to be much, but that was the impact. So what gifts could I give my colleagues? Trust and autonomy. Merry Christmas. One of the key complaints, and I'm sure you're thinking, ugh, that's all I ever hear from people. And actually, if you've ever sat in a security meeting, the mood generally is we don't really trust anyone to make good security decisions. And therefore, the way we handle that is actually we're going to lock things down. Don't trust you, you're going to lock it down. But what does the other side say? You don't trust us and we can't do our job. So one of the key complaints is, you don't trust us, we've lost our autonomy. So I started off small. So my gifts were things like access and loosening up controls. Do you know what was really crucial about it? It was things I was willing to lose as a security person, either because some of these access and control issues were things that were historic, and yeah, we should have probably reviewed those ages ago, but don't let them know that. Or it was just things actually, if we trust people more to make good decisions, yeah, then I'm happy to loosen up these controls. The knock-on effect is that they felt that their work was, less frictionless. They were able to get on and do the job. And at first, this was done by generalized reciprocity. So I wasn't expecting a return, because what my goal here was, I want a really strong relationship with this team. So I will just give you this. I'm not expecting anything in return. You deserve it. Eventually, I was able to move from a more balanced reciprocity in which I was gifted accountability. Again, Merry Christmas. What a wonderful gift. Now, on paper, you think accountability, it's all right. But actually, if you've ever had to look at a rating model in a team meeting and say, hey, team, are you going to be accountable for this? Tumbleweeds. Accountability. Oh, a wonderful proposition for a security person. Let's think about accountability for a moment, though. Accountability done badly acts as a means to leverage shame, or fear of shame, really, because by its very nature, being accountable means at some point, somewhere, you are going to be blamed for something, or you're going to have to justify your actions. Therefore, it's so human nature to avoid being accountable, because you want to avoid being blamed. You don't want to sweat that meeting in front of the CISO and says, why has this happened? You don't want that meeting, and that's why nobody puts themselves forward. And we know as security people, accountability is really important because it's another pair of eyes on that process, that tool, that risk. We need you to be accountable because we can't handle it all. Again, going back to we need that group collective. But the key to positive accountability is giving people the tools and the knowledge they need to make good decisions. And that can only occur if people feel safe to ask questions or raise concerns. Again, going back to that element of let's work together. Let's build that safe and trusting environment so that people can say, actually, I do want to be accountable, but there's this gray area that I need you to help me with. Therefore, if we see a culture where people are putting themselves forward to be accountable willingly, that is indicative to me that that culture is going to be one of trust. So we see a pattern emerge. More trust leads to more people feeling autonomous. Great. More autonomy means that people feel more in control of that situation, and they feel that they have the capabilities to respond and react to a situation if something bad happens, which then leads to more accountability. So they're like, yeah, I'll put my hand up for that because I know you've got my back. If I need some clarification, I need some help. So what the big bonus of that is then is that those who actually become more accountable willingly have a greater stake in how things are handled, which then you can start thinking about how do we improve this process? How do we make sure people are living these processes because they want to have that process be really good for them so that they can put themselves forward for more things? So what happens when you give people the ability to be accountable because you provided them with that knowledge, those tools, that psychological safety to make decisions? Then you can start looking at things like usability and functionality. It's often said that good security is a compromise on usability and functionality, but I don't think it should be. And what it said is, the closer the user moves towards security practices, in this triangle, the more usability and functionality are moved further away. Likewise, the closer you are to usability and functionality, the further you are from security. So really, by this argument that good security is a really crappy user experience, but it doesn't need to be that way. Again, because we keep thinking in absolutes, it means we have to think about compromises, but humans really love a shortcut. We're always going to vote for the easiest route, the happy path. That's why it's called the happy path. And that does have an impact on usability and functionality. But I suggest for you, the things we've discussed so far today, the storytelling, reciprocity, accountability, understanding people's cognitive distance, embracing the gray areas, actually sitting down and having a conversation with people, either participant observation or even just, God forbid, talking to people, not even in a formal kind of anthropological setting. It will mean we don't have to compromise on security. We forget that, like other departments, we too can innovate. We're allowed to, we can be secure, functional, and give users a really good experience, and preferably without them even knowing about it. I like to think of security as ninjas in a good way. Like, if we're doing security well, you don't know it's there. So for my final thought in the morning, how do you achieve this? You might not have an anthropologist in your organization. I'd be really thumbs up if you do. I think that's brilliant if you do. And you might have a hard time convincing HR or the CISO to next hire getting a cyber anthropologist in. If you do, you'll get my number at the end of this. But if you've got one of these in your team, this is a bloody good start. Do you have a user experience or user researcher department? If you do, start making friends with them, because that is a very good alternative. They talk to people all day, every day about micro changes, about the need to make a product or service better. They know how to ask the right questions. They know what people are saying and what people are not saying. So if you do one thing from this talk today, invite a member of the user researcher or experience team to your next team meeting. Start small, do a bit of reciprocity, maybe give them access to that tool they've been bugging you about for ages. Then get them to cast an eye over your mandatory security training. Ask them to sit with people who work in customer service and understand, what do they really think about your access control policy. The user researcher team is the security team's secret weapon for creating a more intrinsic security culture. Use them. Please use them. I've only begun to scratch the surface here with some of the more well-known concepts of anthropology. And in your head, you might be thinking, oh, you know what? This all makes sense. And you know why? It's because you are human and we are talking about culture. Culture is intrinsically interesting to humans because our evolution has required it. Without it, we don't survive. So we seek out these community, these connections to forge these relationships to build a community. So next time when you're looking for your next hire or deciding where to spend your security budget, remember that 95% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by the human. Remember, they're the consistent element here, not the technology, the human element. So how do we start looking at that as a priority? We as security practitioners need to do better to create a culture that enables us to build up our resilience against all these cyber threats, and in doing so, we have to account for actually everyone's an individual. We have to cater for such a wide breadth of expertise, capabilities, experiences, cultural norms, along with all the inequalities and disparities that frame these individuals as well. That's a lot for a security person to do. So don't come away from this thinking, that's too much for me to do, I'll stick my head in, like cognitive dissonance again. There are small steps you can do. Start small. Think to yourself, what decisions can I make to make an anthrocentric security culture? How can I think more like an anthropologist when I go into work on Monday morning? Because at the end of the day, when you follow the cables, behind every piece of tech is a person, a consumer, a creator. Even the hackers are people. We forget this, we demonize them, they're the boogeymen, they're not, they're people. We should never lose sight of this. Thank you so much for listening. And if you'd like to know about the work I'm doing in this space, you can find on Twitter at the Anthropologist or on LinkedIn. But finally, remember to be human. Thank you so much for your time today. I've really appreciated talking to you about this subject. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any. Oh, Chris, are you talking? Because I think you're on mute.
So I'm talking about myself. I apologize. I'm trying to. Sorry, this is. I told us for cybersecurity. I can't access through my work laptop, so I'm doing it via my iPad. Which
well,
there's a tail in
that says it all, doesn't it?
There's a tail in that itself. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed that, and it resonated with my colleague Sam is on the line as well, and we've been talking to each other in the background, saying we both work in audit in public sector. And there's so much that we kind of say, it's not cybersecurity we do, but we in a kind of the audit role. And there was just a question amongst that in our audit about reciprocity.
It's awful, isn't it? I hate that word. Yeah, reciprocity. Yeah, it's a tough one.
Reciprocity. There's a kind of a deeply embedded culture we have about kind of maintaining our independence. Mm-hmm. And it's just some thoughts about how we get over that, because through other work we've done, that reciprocity works. Yes. And that getting into that better accountability, and particularly people telling you things when you're there, that we work in good practice sharing as opposed to hard audit. And we, from an assurance perspective, learn far more because people tell us. And it's an interesting kind of, how do we get that more commonly used? The reciprocity.
Yeah, so what you need to do in that case is, it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, the issue is that, I say issue, it's not really an issue, it's very fixable, but the stumbling block is that as a team itself, you quite like the status that you have, but you also want that communication flow because you have seen this work. The key is you have seen this work. So what I would do from your perspective is to really highlight actually where it has worked. I've said, we could carry on doing it this way, but have you noticed that we get better results if we do it this way? Yeah. Just keep draining. The results don't lie. You know, that's why, you know, when someone shows you a spreadsheet and they say, look at this correlation, you go, yeah, that's great. Yeah. The results really, it helps us make those mental shortcuts. So if you can say, actually, we could do it this way and we could roll that stone up the hill, or we could roll it down, pick which one you want to do. Keep highlighting the wins. And it's the same for risk and compliance, but it's also the same for security. Keep highlighting that wins. If your security team is a bit stuck in the mud, which quite a lot of them are, you know, that's actually what I do in a lot of organizations, is I go into a security team with this lovey-dovey perspective, is what it gets called on my first day. And I come in and I say, you've been doing it this way. What are your results? Definitely silence. I've been doing it this way. These are the results. Should we try it? You try it small. Too often we try and bite things a huge amount. Do it small and say, wasn't it nice to know about that little tidbit?
Thank you.
Keep drip and feeding that in. And that's how you go about it. Change is not instant. Culture is not instant. It takes a long time.
You had a brilliant analogy on that last week, and it was described as building the onion from the inside out. Mm-hmm. And the description was, say, get the stuff that works, build it, experiences, build the next layer, and it was a really lovely way of capturing that. Yeah, thank you very much. I'll go back to mute. Thank you.
If I made add another layer to the onion, I work in cybersecurity sales.
Yeah.
So I'm in between a vendor that has the best solution ever and a CISO or an IT person that is scared shitless about talking to me because everybody's hitting them up with these best products ever. So especially when I interact on LinkedIn, we're supposed to be this tight-knit community who are here for the common good. But when a salesperson shows up, everybody's like, oh no, I'm gonna block you. So what would you say would be a good in-between solution between telling the vendor, look, you're not the only game in town and you're not the best. We should be human, like you said. And then come back to the security person, IT or CISO, and how would you approach them so that they're more open to discuss things?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting
Or
proposal.
not have them be afraid of this next salesperson.
Yeah, so I can, I've experienced that myself. Every day I'm getting bombarded by sales calls, about can I come in and get this product in front of your CISO and things like that. So I totally get the fatigue, and think about that. That fatigue is probably a key word there. So you just got to be very cognizant of that. What I would suggest is, and now this is a different example. So I have many hats, but one of the things I have done, I've actually been a wedding photographer for 10 years. Now let me tell you about the wedding industry. We all want as many clients as we possibly can. So when it's not COVID times, there's about, I think the figures are something like 200,000 people getting married a year or something like that. I'm looking at figures, but just say it is that. But we're all after that business. And in particular, I live in Yorkshire, so I want the Yorkshire business because I'm lazy and I don't want to travel out. I want to stay in Yorkshire. But so the pool gets smaller and smaller. The more specific you get, the pool gets smaller. And then obviously your pricing in a certain way, so you only appeal to clients in a certain price. And so the pool gets smaller and smaller. But what we do as a community is really interesting. So rather than be competitive with each other, we actually work together. So we all offer something slightly different. It is a creative industry, but again, with products and services, you all offer something slightly different. You've all got your unique selling point, or at least I hope you have, because otherwise it's just plagiarizing. But what we do, instead of turning around and going, oh, I want this business, what we say is if there's ever any business that we can't take, either because it's not a good fit, and I have turned down work because I didn't think we were a good match client and client and sale provider, or maybe it just doesn't work, or the dates don't work or something like that, we share that information and say, actually, here's a lead for you. And that's how we build up our community. So if something ever goes wrong, say for example one of the photographers gets COVID and they can't go do that wedding, we will all step in and chip in. We all have like a shared community. We talk to each other on this shared group of people who are quite local to each other, so we can all step in when that happens. We have built this community that is not, even though we're all trying to, for ourselves and our own profits, but when we need it as a collective, we come together, we support each other, we share those leads. If I can't take it, someone else can take it, and then later on they will do the same for me. Think about, is there a way that you can work with other security vendors to say, actually, if this lead isn't quite working, how can you get me in that in? There has to be something, a connection where you're not going to be able to take every piece of work. Nobody can, because the quality will go down unless you expand just as quick. But you're not going to be everything to every customer. So if you hear something, you think, actually, we might not be suitable for you, but I do know that this company does this. Let me get in touch with them for you. Help the client feel like that you're going to meet that need regardless, that you're actually there to help them regardless of what the outcome is. Then people start opening doors for you. Don't think what can that customer do for me? Think of what can I do for that customer.
So in this case, the gift is actually referring them to a better vendor.
The gift for the client is giving them you as the knowledge expert access to a wider network to meet that need that they have. I would much rather, if I was sat in a meeting and perhaps your product doesn't work for me, but I said, I'm interested in something like this, and you turn around, I know someone, that stops me having to go and do the research. That recommendation is also an indication that you vouch for them. So I think in my head, well, if they vouch for them, then that must be good as well. All links back together.
Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? I do have some recommendations if you want to get started with things like this. Someone asked me in another, I did a very shortened version of this at the beginning of the week, and said, oh, what anthropology course can I send my cybersecurity people on? I don't really recommend doing that, and I would say, but the easiest way to do it is some brilliant podcasts out there. And particularly for you, Chris and Sam, the Human Risk podcast by Christian Hunt is a brilliant podcast, and he gets fantastic speakers in, all from it's risk and compliance, but things like scams always come up as well. And he gets all these amazing speakers who've done some incredible things in this field. And it can really, if you start developing an entrepreneurship sort of culture where your security people can go, I heard this in a podcast, can we give this a little try, see if this works? And don't be afraid to fail, because unfortunately, as we are all humans, things, don't fit everything. We are all individuals. Some of these things that I've mentioned today just might not work. You might have some really stubborn people, or you might have some really floaty people that it just doesn't stick. So don't kick yourself out and go, oh, for one thing, don't say Lianne was talking rubbish, but also just don't feel disheartened if it doesn't work straight away or it doesn't work at all. That's the spice of life. That's what makes humans interesting, is the fact that we are all different and we all have to approach things differently. Another podcast I'd recommend is the Brainy Business. Now, this is very business focused, but she discusses a lot of social science and anthropological terms like reciprocity, like cognitive dissonance, sunken cost fallacy, and things like that, which discusses, why people carry on down the road of no return. It's because they've invested so much in and they feel like they can't come back out again. All these things that they discuss in that podcast are really useful to apply to your day-to-day business. So 2 recommendations: the Human Risk podcast with Christian Hunt and the Brainy Business podcast. Any other questions?
I have a question. I really like the talk, by the way. I kind of agree with it, like from A to Z, and I learned a lot of new things. It's really awesome. And I noticed some things from, there's this book called Influence. You might have read it. It's a sales marketing book, and the reciprocity is also really in there, right? So I really like seeing that. I have a question about you give the team trust, right? And then you get accountability in return. I was wondering if you have something that some resources or something, because we are a company I work for, we're also dealing with this problem. We have a security ideal, basically, that we think the team should do, but then things go different, right? The team has a lot of other things that they have to adhere to other than security. So you trust them, but you also want to help them, point them where you think they should be, right? Or actually help them themselves figure it out, basically.
Well, that's the key. You've hit the nail on the head there, is you want to help them. You've got to be really clear that that's the case. You are not, I think what I find sometimes when especially when I first join a security team, for example, and I'll go in and I'll go to the wider team, and I'll say, look, I'm really here to make your lives easier. They don't believe me. They never believe me. Any team I go in outside the security team, and sometimes even the security team themselves at first, but I go in and I go, I really am here to tell me what you need from me. What do you need? And they don't believe me. They don't tell me. They don't believe, and you have to do that building, which is where all the things we've talked about today come from. What you need to do is, again, like I said, the reason accountability is really hard to get is because at some point, in a meeting somewhere, you're going to have, something's going to go wrong, and it will, always does. You're going to have that meeting where someone's going to sweat, and you're going to say, why didn't you do what you said you were going to do?
Yeah.
Why has this happened? This should have been under your watch. How do you feel when I'm telling you like that? When I'm saying, why did you do this? Why has this happened? What have you done?
No, that doesn't.
It's awful, isn't it? It's awful. You dread it. Nobody wants this. Why do I come to work for? I don't come to work for this kind of attitude. So you need to figure out a way. How do I create that psychological safety? Think to yourself, am I doing enough when I say I am going to support you? And it doesn't happen with just you saying, I'm going to support you. Because words are just words. Actions. Get people involved in the loop of meetings, Trickle in information. If something interesting comes up, like a news article, go, okay, this is coming up of the wire. Do you want to have a talk about it? A quick catch up about it. because you've got to think everyone has got their own priorities, haven't they? And, you know, being accountable on a racy spreadsheet, for example, is, you know, just one of those things. Sometimes you get into a meeting once a year. We're going to go refresh the accountability list, you know, because, you know, Michelle's gone, she's left. So who's gonna pick this up instead?
Yeah.
And you've got to think, actually, can you make that meeting less of a drain and or less of a, you know, what's that film? Hunger Games. Less of a Hunger Games mentality. Like, who's going to get picked to do this, to deliver this? And actually, are you creating a culture where people want to volunteer because, you know, they've seen what you've done? Someone else got into, you know, something happened. I was going to say get into trouble. That's wrong. So something happened, and they saw how you supported that person. You didn't wag a finger.
Yeah.
You supported that. You had their back, and you said, okay, that happened. What can we do next time? So that retrospective look and go, what can we do next time to make sure that doesn't happen again? You could even be a bit self-deprecating. Where did I fall down in not supporting you with this decision? Because sometimes that helps, you know, being a little bit self-deprecating and saying, actually, there's a flaw in me. It's the same with fishing. Whenever I do a fishing simulation, one of the key things after it's done, posting, and I still get it, because, you know, there's still some work to do, is like, why are you testing us? Do you not trust us? Why are you so keen on making sure we fail this? That is not the case. I'm here, the phishing simulations are to test me as a security function, how well I'm doing in communicating that message of what to look out for and how to report it. I am not here to make sure that you click on that link so I can go, ha ha, are you stupid for clicking on that phishing link? I don't want that. That's not the message I want to get across. But what I do want to do is go, oh, guys, do you know what you've been doing really well at? You've been reporting it so fantastic. Because, you know, next time that might not be a phishing simulation. That might be the real thing. But you're really helping support the organization do what they need to do. Switch that narrative. Because if the narrative that you're working on at the moment is not working for you, switch it. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah, so it's about intention, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, but that also means you need to change potentially have to change yourself a little bit as well, because if you need to really have that intention to also genuinely tell people, right, I'm here to help you. If that's not really the case, if the trust really isn't there, they're gonna notice that, right?
Or we're instinctual. Humans are instinctual. We can tell when we're not being honest in that respect. We can tell if we're playing, you know, you can tell instantly when someone's paying lip service to you.
Yeah.
So that does mean, like you said, there is a bit of introspection. So a lot of this work actually begins with the security team itself. A lot of this work actually begins internally, thinking, how do we want to be perceived? And it might be challenging our own biases. It might be challenging our own thinking of actually how people are. And remembering, like I said before, these people are people. You know, that they're not just people that are, you know, keeping an eye on a computer. They're actually human beings with motivations, responsibilities. And most people don't come to work to do a crap job. Very rarely people come to work to do a crap job. And we just need to remember that. I think we do forget that as a security function.
Yeah, cool.
When you guys were speaking, something came up, if I may ask one more thing.
Mm.
I have a situation where I supposedly have an equal partnership with someone in business, but I'm starting to feel like they are purposely avoiding something that I'm asking while I'm doing what they're asking.
Okay.
And I have a hard time confronting it because I feel like there is going to be some kind of a problem discussed. Is there a way to do it without a confrontation or without me feeling like I'm worried about discussing it? Like, hey, you're not doing this several times and you promised that you were going to do it, but we haven't had that conversation.
I think you need to think about why you're so nervous about having that conversation, because I think it is uncomfortable. Like, these conversations are really tough. You know, I've had business partners, and it's been, you know, these conversations are hard, and you get that funny feeling in your stomach, you think, and your mind races and you think, well, actually, they're probably not doing this because of this. And usually what you imagine is totally out of this world and crazy, and tends not to be the case. But what I would say is the path to, understanding does tend to mean a little bit of pain at the beginning. So I know that it will be difficult to have this initial conversation, but I tell you what, after you've done it, after you've brought that subject up, the not knowing is so much worse than the actual not speaking. And it's really important to have that dialogue. And you could start by reciprocity yourself. You could start by telling them your feelings. You could start saying, I'm feeling a bit like this. Can we discuss how we go about stopping these feelings? And then maybe that dialogue will open, well, I've been doing it this way because of this. And then you can start having that dialogue that way.
Thank you.
No worries. Good luck.
Yeah,
I've been there.
Nathan, there's a book that I read. It's called A Crucial Conversations, and it is specifically written for precisely this kind of type of conversations where it's really difficult, right? And it dives in why the conversations are difficult, and also into tools that look a lot like what you are saying, Lianne. It's about telling your own story. You need to open up first and try to understand it. It might be useful to you if it goes down to quite some detail on how to approach these things.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Any more? Well, thank you again so much, everyone. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you need anything else from me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me as Lianne Potter. The Anthropologist, which is my company, you can find me there as well. And I'm on Twitter as the Anthropologist. But yeah, thank you again, and it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks a lot. That was really enjoyable, really cool. Yeah.
No worries.
Do you ever come up on Clubhouse?
I've not, because I've held myself back until some security researchers did some deep dive into it, and then I didn't like what the security researchers found about privacy. So I was just like, it's been a long time coming before I even had a smartphone. I've only had a smartphone for 2 years, so I had an old Nokia because I was tinfoil hatting, should we say, for a while.
The reason I asked, because this kind of a conversation would do really, really well, aside from it now being secure. Otherwise, the experience would be enhanced.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm just waiting for them to get their act together, and then I'll be
okay. I'll make a call.
Yeah. Tell them to get, because I would love something like that. So yeah, tell them to get their act together, and I'll be on there. Well, thank you all. I'm gonna nip off now.
Cool. Look, it was a really, really cool session, right? Lots of good topics. Let's do more sessions over the next summit. Like you've seen, like you just propose a topic and then we put it together, and then, especially the conversation you guys were having, right? Like sometimes it's also good just to get a couple of panelists and then you just hash out a topic, right? Because I think some of the stuff you're talking about is also quite challenging, right? And there's lots of good things to unpack on here. So cool. Well, thanks again, Lianne, for doing this. And the video will be live in a bit, and then we'll see you next time.
Yeah, see you later. Thanks very much.